Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, AirspeedPrime here with my next Avatar video. As you can see from the title, this one's going to be about Avatar trivia. I will, towards the end of the video, present to you guys 11 questions and ask you guys to send in your answers to me, and we'll actually make it a proper, little bit of a trivia contest. But before we get to the direct questions, I do want to have a bit of a discussion about it because I think it's interesting to discuss like what I suppose I consider to be good Avatar trivia questions, because the main reason I say this and why it's like, well, what, trivia questions are not that hard to come up with, but I think good trivia questions have to be done in such a way where it is a huge thing if someone gets 100% with all the questions. If they answer every single bit of every question correctly, it should be this like amazing thing that like proves that they are super knowledgeable. So in a way, I think your trivia questions, your group of trivia questions, should be done in a way where it should be very difficult to get full marks, and you should have questions in there where like you are allowed to have half marks and stuff like that. By asking like questions like name 4 of this thing, and obviously if they name 2 you give them half marks, if they name 3 you give them 3/4 marks, and so on, and that sort of thing. And that's the approach that I take because in my experience being the moderator admin on AvatarTheLastAirbenderOnline.com, one of the main community things that we would do when the forums were still up was trivia contests. In the early ones, I was the one asking the questions, and of course I'd come in and out of asking questions even beyond just the very start. But as I'll explain, it's kind of difficult to come up with good trivia questions. But other people would also come in, they'd take over like running it for a week, and it would allow me to participate in the trivia. And in the end, after about like 20 or 30 of them that we did, before I think it just became really tricky to organize it and focus was elsewhere. It ended up where nearly every trivia that I entered I kind of had won, and we did like a sort of rankings thing, and like I was right there at the top. So you guys probably understand that about me if like you're from the site or just from the type of content that I do, that I know my stuff. So trivia is something that I'm good at, both in terms of answering the questions, but I think also in terms of actually asking questions as well. Because probably the biggest learning thing for me was being the moderator and having to, I suppose, moderate the trivia thing with regards to the fairness of questions that people were asking. Because what ended up happening was that initially, when it wasn't me doing questions, a lot of people that asked questions were running it that week. Their questions would be sort of very, I suppose for me, easy, and then just in general for people who would sign up to an Avatar fan site, easy. That if you go too low, if you go average or even just above average questions, everyone's going to get pretty much everything right, and you're going to end up with a trivia where 5 people tie for the victory that week, because the questions, while maybe 1 or 2 of them were tricky, they tended to be facts that people know. Because, at least in my experience, most Avatar fans who are in any way passionate enough to be part of the fandom, especially people like who would watch my channel, listen to our podcast, or join up for the forums, would be knowledgeable enough about Avatar to do really well on any average or above average trivia. And so I knew going in, when I did it, that I had to come up with good questions, and not just difficult questions, not just questions that basically ask everyone to get them wrong, but questions that were fair and difficult, and even when you got them wrong, you learn something, and it's not just a case of like, how was I ever meant to know that? And so that's in a way what this trivia is about, I suppose, giving a good example of that, in that I do feel, looking at the questions, and especially the answers to the questions I'm going to present to you in just a couple of minutes, that if you get them wrong, you'll learn something about like, oh, I didn't get the full marks on that question, but when I get the full marks, I'll learn something new about the Avatar universe, about the dragons here, or, spirits and humans in this one, and how they kind of relate together, and so on. I like to do questions that, in a way, ask people to have a good understanding of the Avatar universe, not just the fact, but understand how things work, and in a way also have Google proof questions as well, because it's one of those things when you do a trivia, say like on a forum, where all I'm doing is putting up a post with a couple of questions and then asking for people to like private message me, in that case, their answers. I have no way to like guarantee they haven't looked up the answers. So I kind of took that into account and was just like, okay, I don't care if you watch the episodes or look up transcripts or stuff like that, or even Google the question. I've designed my questions in a way where maybe you'll get closer to the answer by doing so, but that will probably help you to learn something. That even you just getting to the answer, it helps, I suppose, become a better fan, because you then begin to learn how to like look up information better and so on. And then in some cases, some questions aren't just very easy to kind of Google, because just it's you're asking a very specific question that like you have to look up like 5 or 6 different things to get to the end answer. And so the approach I always have is to be challenging in acknowledging how knowledgeable most of the Avatar fanbase is, but difficult enough that very few people are going to get full marks on it, and difficult enough that also there's going to be a good spread as well, so that pretty much everyone is going to get a different score, so you cut down on ties as much as possible. And for me, a good way to do that is just ask questions where it's like, name 3 of this thing, what are 3 of this thing. That way, if someone only gets 1, they get 1/3 of a mark. If they get 2, they get 2/3 of a mark. If they get the full thing, they get the full mark. That way, over the course of multiple ones, someone might have, you end up with sort of decimal point scores, but it's probably the best way to determine, the difference between people. And you'll see that in the questions I have later on, that's in a way why some of the questions are designed that way. Like, I think I have one question where it's like, name 8 different things, and I'd consider it to be maybe one of the most challenging questions in a way that I have on the thing, because for some people, even me in that question asking 2 might be like tricky enough. Like I expect everyone to probably get 2 on that question. Going beyond that, like I probably could have left it at 3 and had enough people get it wrong to where like the results would be okay. But I pushed it as hard as possible, because I'm making that my question that's like the real tester in a way. And so, I think there's a balance between on the questions that I have, like between it's a slightly obscure moment, but it's not something that just no one would know. Because a good example of this would be, I think, one of the first trivias that I didn't do the questions for. Someone asked something along the lines of this question. It was like, how many candles are in the scene in The Deserter where Zhang talks to Roku? And it was just kind of like, okay, like that is a trivia question, yes, technically. It's not a good trivia question though, because one, who would remember that? It's just a background detail thing that doesn't even matter. So the only way to really get the answer to that is to watch the episode. Like it's not something that someone would know just off the top of their head, and it's not even a particularly like insightful one, as I kind of explained, in terms of like asking someone to go on a little bit of a journey in a way to discover the answer. It's just watch the episode and count the things on screen. So I think that's just a kind of weak trivia question, because there's no knowledge, there's no learning to it either. Similarly, another one like that was like in, I think it's like episode 11, I think it's 11, or Endgame. Either way, the finale of book 1 of Korra. How many planes does General Iroh destroy? And it's like, that's somewhat interesting. The problem is, watching the sequence, it's very unclear if there's an exact number. Because you could interpret it one way of like, he shoots down this plane in this scene, but then they cut to a shot and there's like 2 planes going down, and it's like, are they both the planes from like 2 previous scenes, or what? And it comes into play like animation continuity of just like, is that the case? And then the person asking the question interpreted it one way, and then every single other person said something else. Is the answer 6? Is the answer 7? And so it tends to be that sort of thing where like, to moderate it, you have to just be like, in my interpretation, it has to be like 6, 7, or 8. and they should all be valid answers because it's a very vague thing. That's another case of just like, it's kind of a background thing that's not important. So I think you can do obscure detail questions once they're sort of, there's something notable to them. Like the first question I have is basically about a name. Now it's not the name of a character, it's the name of like an object, but it's one of those ones where, like, again, like, is there much learning to that one? No, but it is sort of a little bit of a memorable scene, so it'll really, if you're paying attention, you probably remember it, that sort of thing. So that's kind of my approach to questions, and as you'll see as I go into explaining this in just a second, that's what you'll get from my questions. I would say overall that the batch of 11 questions I have here are difficult, and if anyone gets them all right, you know, you really know your stuff. The other thing I'll say, the last thing I'll say, is that it's not just the shows. I incorporate things from the comics in, web comics, basically anything in the Avatar universe that is kind of pretty much canon. None of the questions I think are about like voice actors or kind of out of universe stuff. It is all in universe, you know, how the Avatar universe works type questions. So there's that as well. And I think in a way that's the only way to make an honestly tricky batch of questions that is actually you know, fair but challenging, is to just incorporate everything and use the fact that some people may not know about, you know, certain minor details from other things, and that way at least if they don't know the answer, they'll learn the answer and maybe watch that, you know, that web comic that they haven't seen before, and then know all of that information. So yeah, I'm gonna cut over to the graphics I have up here for all of the questions and the explanation for how it's going to work. So here's how the Airspeed's Avatar Trivia Challenge is going to work. There's going to be 11 questions, and you have 1 week from the posting of this video to enter. So next Monday is when, obviously, I won't be accepting any of them, and any of them after that won't be corrected, and they won't be considered in with a chance of winning the trivia. Send your answers to me by email to avataronlinepodcast@gmail.com. This is the only way you can enter, is by sending me an email with your answer to the questions. If you do enter, you know, your score will be shown in the answers/results video when that comes out, obviously in just over a week from now. And that is just to make it clear that, you know, I will be showing the full list of entrants and where everyone placed and stuff like that, with their score beside it. So, you know, obviously you have to take that risk. If you enter, you could potentially not do that well, get a bad score, but you also could win. It's up to you if you want to enter, of course. But just be aware, there will be, the results will be visible right at the end. Don't post answers to any of these questions in the YouTube comments below. Obviously, if you want to be in with a chance of winning the trivia, why would you post answers to the questions that you will basically give to other people going up against you? I will be deleting any comments that include answers to questions just to be fair to everyone, so just be aware of that. You can comment down below if you have any clarification on questions that you would like to get from me, if you're not sure about maybe the wording or something like that, or by emailing me if you want to do a kind of like one-on-one kind of, you don't want your answer to be public in case you maybe inadvertently reveal something or something like that. You can email me for clarification on questions if you want. So again, 11 questions, 1 week to enter. There's no prize, so you're playing simply to be known as the Avatar Trivia Champion. I think this is a tough group of trivia questions, and whoever wins, I think, will be someone who really knows their Avatar. As I explained in the first part of this video, I did put a lot of thought into these questions in terms of, I think, making them challenging in a fair way, to where if you get these questions right, you do really know your Avatar. And I don't think it's necessarily a case of just whoever's the best at Googling or searching transcripts. You have to have a combination of, I suppose, knowing where to look, broad knowledge of the Avatar universe, and just everything in general. So I think it's a really good test, and even if there is no prize, I think it's something good to enter. I think it also kind of helps in a way, just for what I'm trying to go for here, that there isn't any prize beyond just how much do you know. So the winner will be someone who just really likes knowing a lot about Avatar. So let's get into the questions here. So question 1 is this one here. What is the name of the little girl's doll from the episode Jet? That is episode 110, episode 10 of book 1, Water. So what is the name of the little girl's doll from that episode? Question 2. Name 10 last names in the Avatar universe. And I also have a note here, fake names do not count. As an example of that, Wang Fire. It's a name that they made up. It doesn't count as being an official last name in the Avatar universe. Similarly, Bonzu Pipimpatolopsicopolis III, that is also not a valid last name. It has to be actual, real characters, not made up names within the universe. So you have to name 10 of them. So obviously I think that gets across what exactly I'm looking for here. There's no negative marking here, so like if you're unsure about like, oh wait, that character, is that considered the second name? Include it if you want. Just obviously when you're doing this, please don't just like list every single character. Don't just like type out every character that you know and hope that you hit everything. But again, I'm not going to be too harsh in terms of correcting or anything like that. It's just like, to me, there's probably about 15 or so answers to this question, so name 10 of them. So, that's question 2. I think that's probably one of the hardest questions, in that I think when I initially started, I had said name 6, then I think I bumped it up to 8, and then I settled on 10 just because I want this to be the question that sort of separates the people who really know their stuff from those who maybe don't know as much. So I wanted to make this like as tough as possible. That's why it's 10 and not something much lower. Question 3. How many yuans does the team that wins the pro bending tournament receive? Show your workings. So if you just give me the number and it's just the answer, you're not going to get full marks on the question. You have to show where that number came from, because that number is never stated in the show itself, but it gives you all of the information needed to figure it out. So that's why I require you to show your workings here, to show that you actually, I suppose, understand this, because it's not just really a fact that you would just know the answer to this question, you actually have to figure it out. So that's why I sort of require the figuring out process as part of the question. Question 4. Name 3 spirits who chose to take on a mortal form. So yeah, that's the question here. I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but just the idea of it's obviously a spirit who decided, and they went from being a typical spirit form to taking on a form where they actually are able to die. So I think that's very self-explanatory. Next question is very similar to that, but the kind of reverse. Name 2 humans who became spirits. And as a caveat here, I just put in, past avatars don't count. Obviously, it's a very specific situation with the past avatars, but for the sake of this question, I don't think it's really fair to include them, because it's still a little up in the air about like the spirits of the past avatars. Are they spirits in the same way that like Heibai is a spirit? Not really. So that's what I mean by that. Humans who actually became proper spirits over time. Question 6 is this one. The fire temple on Crescent Island has been destroyed twice. What is the key similarity between both of these times? So this is basically just, 2 different events, the temple being destroyed in each of them. What is the sort of thing that kind of connects them both? What is the thing that is a similar factor in both of the destructions of the temples? That's what I'm trying to say here. It's kind of difficult to word it in a way that doesn't just immediately give away what the answer is, but I think you get what I mean here if you know the situations I'm talking about. Question 7 is this. In 104, The Warriors of Kyoshi, we meet a girl named Coco, who is part of the group of fangirls who follow Aang around. What is the significance of her name in relation to where she lives? So Coco, what is the significance of the name Coco in relation to where Coco is from in that episode? So that's what I'm getting at there. Question 8 is this one. We have seen 4 different colors of dragon. What are these 4 colors? For each color, mention where a dragon of that color makes an appearance. So this is just to sort of avoid people just like listing off a stream of colors and basically getting it right just by mentioning all of the main colors. You actually have to be like, this color, you see a dragon of this color in like this episode, this comic, whatever. That's what I'm talking about here. So just be aware of that. To get full marks, you have to be specific enough to show that you understand and know it beyond just that you're able to name off some colors. So question 9 is this one. So here, using airbending to suck the air out of the Earth Queen's lungs was not the first appearance of this technique in the franchise. What character used it first? What character used the sucking air out of people's lungs with airbending technique first? Pretty simple one. That's all you have to do. Just give the name of the character. So question 10 is this one. Name 4 characters who lived to be over 100 years old. So 4 characters who all are confirmed at some point to hit over 100 years old. Now they don't have to be like dead or anything like that to kind of confirm this way. Just 4 characters we know who at some point lived to be over 100 years old. Obviously, caveats here are that it is like 100 years alive as a human is kind of what I'm talking about here. So, spirit, type things, weird scenarios like that aren't really kind of valid here. I'm just talking about characters who, live to be over 100 years old. So it's one of those things, like don't overthink it. I'm trying to be as specific as possible here, just in case, but that's what I'm talking about. Last question. Name 5 sets of twins in the Avatar universe. And then, as a kind of bonus add-on to this, to get absolute full marks, one of these sets of twins is different than the rest. What makes them different? So basically here, the idea is that you have to name ultimately 10 characters. So 5 sets of 2 twins in the Avatar universe, and then one of that group, one set of twins, 2 characters, are different than the other twins in some way. Explain to me what that difference is. So they are the 11 questions that you have 1 week to answer. Again, going back to the instructions, 1 week to answer. Email me your answers. avataronlinepodcast@gmail.com. That is where you send them to. Not accepting entries anywhere else. You have to send them by the email. You can ask questions if you want clarification or stuff like that on the questions. But please don't post answers to these questions in the comment section. I will be deleting comments just to keep it fair for everyone and not have it be a thing where people win because they copied answers from the YouTube comment section. That's why I chose to do it by email, but that's just how it works. So there it is. That is the end of the video. Good luck to everyone who wants to participate. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.